First of all, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us during this session. I have to say, firstly, that within the framework of the Master of Law in International Legal Studies that is offered by the University of Deusto, we have organized this special session with one clear purpose. And this is very simple, is to share with the attending persons the experience of 3 professionals with a large professional career in the field of international legal counseling and practice. So to me, it's a great honor to introduce you, first place, Professor Rafael Cid. He is a lawyer. He is co-founder and director of legal strategies of Gentium. Gentium is an independent and non-profit organization that works to ensure full respect for the fundamental rights of the most unprotected and unrepresented groups. In second place, we have as well with us Azcunaga. She is a protection officer at the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees at its office located in Madrid. As you know, the purpose of this United Nations entity is to aid and protect refugees, forcibly displaced communities, and stateless people, and also to assist in their voluntary repatriation or local integration. And last but not least, we have the honor to come with the participation as well of Neide. She's Global BD Manager at EXCELIA. EXCELIA is a global consulting company that is focused on helping people with different needs in the international management sphere of their companies in order to provide global solutions to those companies with multinational needs. Once this short presentation has been done, I have to say that at the end of the presentations, all of the participants will have the opportunity to make some comments or maybe to make questions. So feel free to share with the speakers your thoughts about the lectures, the speeches, okay? So thank you very much. I think that Professor Rafael Cid is going to be the first one to present. Rafael, you have the floor.
Thank you, Emilio. Thank you to all the attendants as well. Yes, as Emilio said, I'm a lawyer. Okay, I'm active and I'm a co-founder of Gentium, okay, an NGO that, as Emilio has introduced, I mean, is active in the field of strategic human rights litigation, okay? This is a concept that is not very common in the Spanish legal field, okay, but it's related mainly, I mean, we're a group of lawyers which try to use legal means, okay, to bring about changes in the law, in reality, or even in public awareness related to a particular field of human rights, okay? So the strategic part of the human rights lawyer in itself, I mean, is what is quite of a little bit of the difference if we compare it with other human rights fields, I mean, or general or common human rights fields, okay? Strategic human rights litigation or lawyering have different names and in different countries. I mean, you can also hear about movement lawyering, impact litigation, cause lawyering, public interest lawyering. So it's a concept that is still being discussed even by the scholars about what is really about it. But it's really about being a lawyer, but with a different objective mainly, okay? It's about choosing cases and going to court or to international bodies with the aim of having a different impact, not just winning the case, but also trying to bring about any change in whatever is needed in this particular field of law, okay? So, I mean, I think that the idea here is that we share a little bit our experiences as in my case as a lawyer. I think I'm the only one like working as a pure lawyer, okay? And this, I mean, working as a lawyer from an international perspective is particularly, it is um, different from other professions, I think, because I mean law, I mean generally, I mean the scope, the geographic scope of law, and where you can really practice is always really something that you must at least or you need to know how to do it really. And here you will always find a kind of attention if you want to bring a case before a court in Spain. Of course, you must know, I mean, all the human rights background, of course, but you need to be qualified, of course, as a Spanish lawyer, or if you're practicing in the US as a US lawyer, or in the particular state in which you are based, really, or in Germany, or in whichever country you are really working as a lawyer. This is important because I mean here I mean as a human rights lawyer, if you are interested in any way in working as a human rights lawyer, I mean you need I mean to know also about the particular I mean national I mean legal context, and if in particular even if you want to reach finally, for example, the European Court of Human Rights, you will need always to exhaust previously all the national I mean, previous judicial path. I mean, you may need, even if you are depending on the field, on the particular field of law, if it's civil law, if it's administrative law or whatever, just to exhaust all the remedies before you are able even to go, okay, before an international body. Which means, I mean, that finally, I mean, you will need to really uh, before I mean understanding and being able to reach this international I mean objective that for example if you're working in the human rights field, I mean it's the universal field by its very nature. I mean you need to know that finally I mean you will always have to go down to any kind of national law to understand how this can be implemented in the place I mean you are really based. Okay, and that's so that sometimes I mean if you really want to work as a human rights lawyer, it's something that sometimes I mean is important for you to know before you start really preparing yourself, that you will need as well to understand I mean the national law of the place where you're based. Okay, so in particular about the strategic human rights litigation, and I'm not going to talk so much about it because maybe, I mean, you are not even interested in this field, but I think that is, and it's one of the, I think, most important things of this field, really, of exercising as a lawyer, is that you need to be to understand about human rights law. You need to understand about your particular, I mean, the national body of law where you're based, but you also need to understand very well, I mean, which is the problem you really want to solve or to help, I mean, solving, in the sense that that's the part of the strategic part. I mean, it's not about winning a case, as I was mentioning before. It's about bringing about change in whatever, I mean, the situation of a particular violation of human rights, I mean, you are facing. So this means, and this is also fascinating for a lawyer, as we are always, I think, really focused on winning a case. But here, I mean, it brings us some space to be creative and to really understand what is important in order to solve the problem, I mean, you are facing. And in that sense, as an strategic human rights litigator, you will always have to work with NGOs active in the field of human rights, where you're working, for example, if you're working with children's rights, for example. I mean, the only way to be able to really bring about the change is about knowing perfectly what is the problem and how really you can help solving this problem. If you have a problem with brutality of administrations in protection centers, for example, you really need to bring on board, I mean, NGOs active in the field, really to make you understand what is the situation with this particular violation, and to understand which of the different venues you really want to try from a legal perspective to try to be effective in order to try to solve this problem. You can even, in this sense, I mean, be very effective even if you lose a case. And that's something that sometimes for lawyers is quite difficult to understand. But I mean, if you, for example, it can be in your objective to bring public awareness, for example, of a particular problem or human rights violation that is not really in the media, that is not really being known by the public, and you really need this support by the public to be to have enough strength to go before the authorities who have the competence or the power really to change things. And sometimes you really need the support of the people, and if you don't have it, I mean, it will be really difficult, or you will need more time to get it. So there are plenty of cases in which even cases that have been lost have been like the present, the first step towards gaining really and getting a good outcome from a court in the future. And sometimes you also need, I mean, the courts to 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 analyze and to know that there is a problem before them. And sometimes human rights violations, I mean, don't get the courts. And that's a big problem sometimes if you really want to make a body who tends to be conservative, I mean, in general, I mean, to change and to evolve some case law and their way of thinking about a particular human rights violation. I mean, you really need to bring cases before them to really bring about this change in precedents or case law, for example. Okay. I think I'm almost taking my 10 minutes, and I almost there's so many things to say about it. I hope, I mean, in the last 10 minutes, I mean, if you have any questions, just of course, just let me know. But I wanted also to share with you, okay, if you want to work in this, and this happens everywhere in the world. I mean, you have yesterday human rights litigation organizations in Germany, in the UK, in Latin America, in many countries. I mean, more established even than here in Spain, in France as well, in most of the Western countries as well. I mean, you need to have all this legal background. Of course, you need to know a lot about the problems. I mean, the particular human rights violations and how really they are really happening in the very minute in which you are trying to intervene from a legal perspective. And you also need to be very careful and to understand how to implement, I mean, any potential good or bad outcome out of your the legal strategy. And that's something that sometimes you also have very good precedents, but sometimes, I mean, your organizations, we are not good at really trying to implement this change and to make it really effective for the good of the people, I mean, you're trying to protect and to defend. And that's something that sometimes we forget as lawyers. I mean, that is not just only about, of course, getting the cases as in the place you really wanted to get the place, but also about really implementing it. That means finally that human rights violations will be prevented in the future, and that people, I mean, human rights victims will not suffer it again, and these collectives, I mean, will not suffer these violations again in the future. So positive, I think, things of this profession and working as an strategic human rights litigator, of course, is really rewarding if you're interested in really the humankind and how really to prevent violations of I think is one of the most important pieces of agreement, you know, of the humankind we have the opportunity to experience. Of course, it's rewarding as a lawyer. Is really I don't know, interesting, not even just because of the objective, also because the subject matter itself, I mean, and technically, it's really, I mean, you have the opportunity to go to international bodies, you can go to the UN bodies, as we've done with many cases with children's rights, and it's very interesting also technically and really rewarding finally. And also, but or maybe not so strong points about it. I mean, that it's always, I think, always useful to know before you really think about really being involved in this kind of practice. That, of course, is sometimes very frustrating. I mean, it's really difficult to get courts and administrations really to change their view in how they violate or they have to change their attitude towards human rights victims. So it's something that you have to handle. I mean, as a lawyer, I mean, we are used to, as lawyers, to handle. I mean, we don't always win cases, but in this particular field of law, I mean, it can happen more often than in other fields of law, and that can be frustrating sometimes. But I think that as finally you know that the impact in the case you are able to bring and to win. I mean, the impact it can be so important for the community itself and for the victims. I mean, that makes sense really to try. And if we do not try, I mean, situation would be much worse. That's for sure. So finally, I mean, we are convinced that this is so necessary and so important in these troubled times. And so I think that I will encourage anyone who really has any kind of interest in this field of law to keep in touch and to get involved. Definitely.
Thank you very much, Rafael. Our next speaker is Azcunaga from the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Anna, you have the floor.
Thank you, Emilio. Thank you very much for inviting us to this session. It's a pleasure to be here again. I studied law in this university a long time ago, and it's really great to be here again with you. So yeah, as I said, I studied law, and yeah, I was thinking before that I really enjoyed the degree, but I don't think that I had any expectation on having an international career when I was studying. That I think that came later, and yeah, I did a master in human rights where Felipe Gomez was a professor also, and that was a long time ago also, and then I've been always involved in human rights, but from a very legal perspective, I would say. So I started working for UNHCR like 4 years ago. I have to correct you. I'm not the protection officer. I have that is my boss, but I'm a senior protection assistant in the protection unit in the office in Spain. I don't know if everyone knows what is UNHCR. You explained it very well before. It's the UN agency for protection of refugees, and basically we work to improve the lives of refugees, of forcibly displaced persons, and of stateless persons. And well, the agency has the role of protecting refugees, as I said, and in Spain specifically, we have a supervisory role of the implementation of the Geneva Convention, and we have an advisory role that is recognized in the Spanish asylum law of 2009. And that means that we work with different authorities and also with the civil society in Spain that work for refugees, and other institutions like the Ombudsman, or even with the universities. And I think that I work specifically in the legal team of the protection unit, and that means that I'm very involved in the procedural issues, and I do a lot of things, but in a daily basis is true that to work here is the work is more at institutional level. I would say we don't have a daily contact with asylum seekers or with refugees, but still is a very important part of my work, and I know that after, even if I'm not in contact with the persons for whom I work every day, I know that at the end of the day I work for them, and all the decisions in which I have an impact, it has finally an impact on them. No? So yeah, I deal with the asylum applications, and also we do monitoring visits to places where asylum seekers are, like for example at the airports or at detention centers in Spain, or it could be a border post or in Melilla, in Ceuta. So it's true that for me, as I work in the office in Spain, my work has a very national scope, I would say, but still to work in an international organization, of course, that you always have the opportunity to be in contact with colleagues in offices all over the world. We do many things with the offices in the Americas, for example, because the link is between Spain and the countries in the Americas region, and also with Geneva, or so that's very often we have contact with them, and we do activities together, and it's also to work in an international organization means that you will have always the opportunity to move somewhere else. In UNHCR we have like different options to get involved with, like I was thinking when I was preparing the session that maybe it would be interesting for you to know that we have different ways to get involved with the organization, and we have like talent pools that is pools where the experts on different fields, like in protection or in data management, for example, or in communication, they can get involved with the organization. For us lawyers, it would be the field of protection. And then we have also something that maybe could be appealing for young people, that is the UNV program, that is UN Volunteers Program. And then of course we have the possibility to get involved through the external positions as in other institutions or organizations. So I think that for me it has been a long way to get to get here, to be working in an international organization. I'm really happy working here, because I think that it makes me feel like in a very professional atmosphere, like in a place where I can really grow as a professional, and from working with very connected to the international human rights law and all the developments in that field. But at the same time, I really feel that at the end of the day, I'm working for persons and for the refugees in this case, and that I really feel that what I do, it has an important impact on them. So I any question or any comment that you have, I will be glad to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne, for your presentation. Our last speaker is Neide from EXCELIA. Neide, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rafael and Anne. How interesting works that you have. So I'm a lawyer and tax advisor, and during all of my career I have worked with international companies, especially in international tax planning. I'm going to tell you about the importance of the international aspects of my work. I graduated in law with an economic specialty of the University of Deusto in 2008. I work in 3 different firms, Garrigues, BDO, Ausadi, always linked to advising international companies. Currently, I'm working in another consulting firm in EXCELIA, where we help companies to create subsidiaries abroad and provide them with accounting, tax, and payroll services in more than 50 countries. It's not an easy job, an easy work, because you must know the regulations of many countries and deal with a lot of kind of people, different cultures, different timetables. So it's not really easy. Nowadays, as you know, the more and more companies decide to expand their business abroad, either with export or creating new companies abroad. So I think that for law professionals, we need to work and learn more and more about the international issues, because if we want to be a great or a good professional, you need to have close to your clients. In my case, before this professional stage, I lived in Chile for 4 years. And it was a really good experience, personal and professional experience. So I invite you to do is a part of your studies or your professional career. During this stage, I work with foreign companies what wanted to do business in Chile. So that kind of companies want to have the advice, the knowledge, how to invest in Chile, how create companies there. So it's really interesting when you are working in the country that is not your own country. So I really invite you to go abroad, to study abroad, to work abroad, and to have this experience in your life and also in your career. So I'm going to be very short, but in conclusion, I believe that is necessary to study and develop an international aspect that I think that it will help you to be an excellent professional, because nowadays all the companies are international. All the companies has the point in another countries, in another market. So I think this kind of studies are good for the students. So I invite you. Thank you so much for everybody.
Thank you very much, Neide. Again, thank you very much, Rafael and Anne as well. And we have some minutes to make some questions. We have a little bit, 10 minutes more or less. So if some of the participants wants to make some comment or questions to our speakers, now is the time. I have one. Is a practical or pragmatic question, maybe. When we finish the law school, when we finish our studies in a regular faculty of law school, We think maybe, I don't know if it was your case, but in mine it was my case, and of course I am maybe still thinking in the same way, but I don't know because I don't work every day in international legal issues as you works day by day, no? We think that maybe it's very, very difficult to obtain a job position in some private company or in a public institution that deals with international legal issues. Do you think that this is true? Is difficult? It's really difficult for example, to work in the United Nations, for example, in the case of Anne. I'm really sure that you have been working for a long time and you also say it before, to get your position. But the question is there positions for people that are interested in working in this field, or there are only few possibilities? I say that, Anne, but the question is in general.
I would say yes, of course, that there is place for everyone who wants to try at least. I wanted to say before that maybe it's useful for you that, for example, one thing that is obvious, but that is highly valued, at least in UN, of course, is to know languages, and well, it's not only highly valued but it is required that you know that you speak fluently in English and another UN language as minimum. And another thing that I think that is highly valued, as Neide said, is to your experiences abroad. I would say that that's something that yeah, it's valued. Not maybe specifically in the legal field, but yeah, at least in the UN system, what is required is to have competencies in different areas and to be able to tell about your skills and your competencies, and even if it has if they have been in completely different areas. I know that in the UN we have many people that have been working in the private sector and then they change, and so, but yes, I would say that, I mean, difficult or not, I've been working for many years in NGOs as a lawyer, in a small law firm, in many things before starting here, but it's possible.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, I think you have opportunities. You have plenty in the human rights field, for example. You have some opportunities. I mean, if you want to work with NGOs, I mean, not in international bodies or agencies or wherever, whichever. That, of course, there are not so many, and of course, the options are limited, definitely. Working as a lawyer, I mean, you will have opportunities to start in organizations abroad via internships. So organizations, I mean, in different countries, they offer these positions. They will value an LLM like this one, for example. They will value, I mean, the background you may have, all the experiences that Neide and I were saying, I mean, all the experience you may have abroad in the human rights field, or even just been proving that you have been connected with problems, international problems, that will definitely help. Finally, in the human rights field, it's for sure that, I mean, one of the downsides of the human rights field is like, I mean, it's not so well resourced. So there are not so many positions, I mean, that you can really live on them, and so it's limited as well. Okay, so it's something that you must face. I mean, you should know from the beginning. But if you're really interested in it, as both of Yes and Neide were saying, international languages, having experiences abroad, that will definitely help. You may have the opportunity to work in as an intern, and then it's up to you and how to you evolve, I mean, your career, whether you want to really keep on doing this kind of work or not. As regards the other part, the commercial part, I also have been working as a commercial lawyer, and I've been working as an in-house lawyer in a multinational company in the past as well. So it was and for people who may be interested in just this commercial part, and Neide explained it so well, but once you are inside, I mean, and it was not only in these multinational companies, but with other colleagues, and once you are inside this company, most of them offer opportunities to go abroad, to have, they have some short term internships with other affiliates or even with the parent companies. So I think opportunity, you will have opportunities. I mean, there are some opportunities, of course. They are more limited than others, of course, but if you try to improve your knowledge of languages and your experiences abroad, that will definitely help.
Thank you very much, Rafael and Anne. Any other question, maybe? No questions there. Okay. Unless Felipe wants to say something, I think that we can conclude this session. Felipe? It's a picture, a static picture there. Maybe he's having connection problems. I don't know. Okay. Well, if there is no other question, I would say again, thank you very much, Neide, Anne, and Rafael. It has been a pleasure to share your experience, and for us was very enrichment experience. So I hope to see you in the future, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you so much.